get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down.
And welcome in. Appreciate you being with us on this latest episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Vince Progard, that's me. Happy to be joined, as always, by Mr. Phil Byrne himself. And Phil, we'll get to the game itself, a game where the Lions lost by 6 points to the Buffalo Bills at home, their first loss in 3 months or 92 days, if that's more your thing. But why does it feel like they, instead of just one game, they lost about 5 games at once, and the football gods swooped in and burned down Ford Field and everybody that happened to be in it at the time?
Well, the record-breaking Lions season continues. It's just not yards. It's just not wins. It's injuries and, more importantly, guys out for what appears to be the rest of the season. Vince, I think we're in past 15 now after Monday's news broke that likely all 3.
When you're ready for the list, I'll give you the list.
Carlton Davis, Aleem McNeil, and David Montgomery would all 3 be joining their fallen comrades.
Hutchinson, Pecco, Davenport, Kaminsky, Anzalone, Barnes. I'm just spitballing. Rakestraw, Dorsey, Rodrigo. I'm sure there's others I'm forgetting here, but it just goes on and on and on.
And I think this is going to be one of those situations. Again, there are still plenty of talented Lions that are still healthy, still contributing, and we're going to see them the rest of the way. I think this is going to be one of those situations where, especially when we're the Lions and we're not the New England Patriots, or we're not some team that has had this period of unprecedented success before, regardless of what happens, I mean, we're running out of guys, and we've been running out of guys for a long time. I think we played, in some regards in this game, good, but against a great team, against the best player in the game, and when you can't capitalize, it doesn't even matter what you got out there. You're not going to do anything. But I think this team, with what we've got the rest of the way, is just going to be a classic case of what if. Because, you know, we very well may still win the NFC North, but I've never seen a team with so many odds stacked against them. I just really feel bad for the guys that are in the room that are giving their all. You know, they'll get the accolades, they'll get the honors of this tremendous run that they've been able to put together this season. But you just shake your head. How does this happen to one team? You know, especially for some team that, like, again, if you're listening to this, chances are you're a Lions fan, unless you just happen to stumble across this. You know what this team's history is. You know why we can't get any breaks. You know, man, just it was heartbreaking, and it was hard enough to taking the game in. I was at the game and kind of watching it unfold. We really never had a shot in it, quite frankly, after they went up 14-0 and we couldn't get a stop. But then the news of the 3 other injuries today, you just wanted to scream, quite frankly. I don't know where to go with kind of the rest of this. We can get into the game a little bit more, Vince, but I've never seen an injury situation on one team that was as talented or as good as this team be in more dire situation than what we have right now.
You can only take so much as a fan, and this latest slew of injuries was the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, you and I have been doing radio and podcasting for a long time, and part of the reason why you and I are as good together as we are is because our personalities aren't carbon copies. You tend to be a little bit more light at the end of the tunnel kind of guy. I tend to be the negative Nancy, and this is exactly the route I'm prepared to go down with this team. I fully understand that on paper, mathematically, every single last one of the Lions' goals are right there in front of them. They have not lost any tiebreakers. They still fully control their own destiny to get the division crown, to get the number one overall seed, a first round bye, and home field advantage all the way up until the end of it. Fully understand that. But the game against the Bills, before we even get to the injuries, the game against the Bills disappointed me in so many ways. For starters, you just mentioned it, Phil. 3 and out, touchdown. 3 and out, touchdown. You know what that is,
Yep.
Phil? That's not being ready to play. That's having
Yeah.
10 days to get ready for a team that you've probably had circled on your calendar since the NFL
Yeah.
schedule came out in May. You knew that Josh Allen and the high-powered offense and the stingy yet slightly unpredictable defense was going to be coming to town week 15 of this season. You knew weeks ago that it was going to be a real big affair with CBS bringing their whole studio crew there, and you were coming off a real big win against the Green Bay Packers, and you had some time to rest up, and you were getting guys back from injury. And that's what you get.
Yeah.
You get 2 3 and outs and 2 touchdowns given up on defense, and Buffalo couldn't have made it look easier all afternoon long. You look at the box score, and you're just an average NFL fan who didn't watch the game but thought, oh, hey, this was a hotly contested game by 2 red-hot teams in the NFL. And I don't think that did it nearly the amount of justice. I think you kind of
No.
hinted at it, Phil. I don't think this game was close as the score indicated.
No,
I
it
think
wasn't.
the Lions got absolutely worked in numerous categories, offense, defense, and you can't even count on Jake Bates to make a 50-plus yard field goal anymore, but I digress. I think that we've seen a lot of what the Lions are capable of over the course of the regular season with blowing out teams and showing a lot of grit and this and that and the other stuff. But we also saw what they were capable of in the game against the Bills, and that's they're fully capable of getting out to slow starts, not being able to protect against mobile quarterbacks, athletic quarterbacks, not being able to hold your assignment when you're hit with adversity and yet another guy goes down on defense. I think enough's enough with this team. And this is the last time you're ever going to hear me mention Super Bowl and the Lions in the same sentence until maybe something crazy happens because it's the NFL and crazy stuff happens. But I'm off that train now. I'm not even so sure that winning the division's a thing. And you're going to go from being the number one team in the NFL through 14 weeks. They may very well, Phil, have to go on the road and play their first game, wildcard weekend, at Tampa Bay, a team they already lost to, or got to go on the road, see Stafford and the Rams again out on the West Coast, a team that they were so close against in the playoffs last year, and a team they were fortunate enough to beat in overtime thanks to the coin toss.
All right. So I'm going to rein it in just a little bit here. Because again, we'll come at this from opposite sides. To me, this game showed me that this is a true test of what happens when, hey, we haven't really missed Hutch that much. We haven't really missed a pass rush this much. Name a wide receiver that really did anything for Buffalo. It was Ty Johnson and the tight ends. It was because we got linebackers that can't cover. We got who knows what out there. We got more scabs on a picket line on that Lions defense than you would normally see out there. I think at the core, this team still has the capability to go out and take care of business against Chicago and San Francisco. Who knows? Maybe we'll get Anzalone back for that game against Minnesota. Yeah, I would totally agree with you that this division is sure from a surefire thing. I also know that for every high, for every low, there's a part in between. And yes, the panic button, I've hit it about 10 different times in that game. It was vomit inducing. Credit to the guys that still tried to make it a game late, for still hanging in there when in reality, we should have lost by 21 points. When kind of looking at just how one-sided it was. Um, but I think this team is still going to go out and compete, and I think we're still going to get a couple more wins here to close out the season. You're right. We're in the playoffs technically on the record that we were able to go ahead and accomplish. But I think this is a classic case of what if, because again, even if we had half the guys active that are on the injured list or something like that, had a couple more bounces our way, um, there's no telling what the potential of this team could be, because we've seen it. We know what's out there. But let's I just want to say let's pump the brake a little bit before we talk about going,
But that's
to Tampa or
exactly what
anything like
Dan
that.
Campbell was getting at
You know,
after the NFC Championship game. And that's exactly why that game stung so much, to have a 17-point lead in the second half of the NFC Championship game, because he even said, it's almost as if he was prophetizing something. You don't know what's going to happen over the course of an NFL season. And it's almost as if he knew what he was talking about, because it sure seems like even sitting at 12-2,
yeah,
you're just you're missing the horses, you're missing the Jimmies and the Joes, whatever you want to call it. A lot of these guys who are on the defense now, you talked about the linebackers, the reason why the running backs are having so much success catching balls out of the backfield, and why the tight ends were as dynamite as they were in the Bills game, because you got guys that aren't real NFL players
yeah,
suiting up for you and playing defense. If these guys were any good, Phil, they would be on active NFL rosters right now. That's not ours.
yeah.
That's a very real situation that the Lions are up against. And spoiler alert, we're looking at wind chills in the single digits coming up Sunday in Chicago, a place where the Lions have struggled more years than they haven't. Goff outside in the freezing cold, it's a thing. Minnesota really hasn't lost since they played us, basically.
All
Doesn't
right. Well,
matter that it's going to be coming to Detroit.
that's
They play
so.
indoors too.
No, I know what you're getting at, Vince. The Chicago Bears and San Francisco 49ers, where those two teams are, the 49ers have an injury situation similar to the Lions. They haven't lost as many guys. They're still capable of beating us. And yes, I will say this. If we can't go cover Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, good luck covering George Kittle. I will give you that. I think this team, regardless of who shows up, they're going to go ahead and give San Francisco everything they can get in a couple weeks. Chicago, we will see what happens, but even if it is outdoors in the elements, um, I still like the Lions' chances with that. I know as crazy as that may seem based on what we've seen, but again, I kind of want to approach it of, I think we have to have realistic expectations of what to accomplish with this team left. They will still be in the playoffs one way or the other, and I think we just have to kind of go from there for what. So again, if you're thinking Super Bowl, if you're thinking one seed, if you're thinking NFC Championship game, come off that pedestal. We're going to be in the playoffs. We got to keep winning some of these games to get whatever we've got out there still accomplishable for what we can go ahead and do. I just don't know. I don't know how this defense. I don't know how if we don't score 45 points a game, you know, I think we have enough to beat Chicago and San Francisco. But even at home, I don't trust this defense now to get a stop.
But even
You
now,
know?
Phil, so we really have focused more on the defense so far.
Yeah.
David Montgomery is what makes things go on this offense, and he's going to be out for the year now. He's what
Yeah.
makes Jahmyr Gibbs a bigger threat. He's what opens things up in the passing game. That's a huge, huge, huge loss now on the offense. And that's a guy that you need to
Yeah.
take into a freezing cold game in Chicago, a stadium and environment that he is quite familiar with, having come over to us from Chicago. I don't think we've fully come to grips with the fact that Montgomery is not going to be a part of this equation, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say this though, that I just think I would take Jahmyr Gibbs in whatever combination of Baki and Reynolds we have against most other teams that don't have Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry at this point. You know, They're
The
not
offensive
going to
line's got
have.
to play a heck of a lot better than it did against the Bills. That's for sure.
No, yeah, they absolutely got dominated, and I actually think that was on the offensive line too, early on for some of those 3 and outs. So I don't know what's going on there. I know, I think it was Glasgow. I think was dealing with something that it sounds like he's just going to be a little bit of like a questionable tag. I think from an injury standpoint, but interior didn't look too great. We got a couple of holding calls in that game against Frank Ragnow as well. So.
And
Um,
he got straight pancaked on one of those plays. I remember
yeah,
going back and watching the replay on CBS, and he doesn't get beat like that ever.
yeah,
Like something outer space.
yeah. Well, these are the chips. This is kind of how it's fallen here. I don't know. I've never seen anything like this. To go from such a high and again, I think we maybe took it in jest to be like, hey, like embrace what we've got while we've got it. You know, because things have changed. Things have changed for
But
the
that's what's
worse.
frustrating is because it hasn't netted in anything aside from
Right.
simply making the playoffs. And like it or not, our expectations have moved far beyond that. That's why nobody celebrated a week ago when they wrapped up the playoff
Yeah,
berth.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not a big deal
yeah.
anymore. And that's good because that means the trajectory of this franchise has evolved to a much better place than it was even as recently as 3-4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will say this. Josh Allen in Buffalo, the way that they came in, they attacked us exactly how you should have. If we ever get to the point of seeing Philadelphia, I would even say Caleb Williams too. Anytime with a running quarterback, knowing the lack of players that we have in that linebacker core, where basically it's Jack Campbell and scrub one and scrub two next to him, it's going to open those plays up. So again, as we're kind of moving forward here, this really is going to go on the offense that you can't just like have these little drives sputter out. If you're getting to midfield, you got to go down and you got to go get a touchdown, or we're going to get beat in all of these games. I know the offense is capable of having these kind of games where we can put more points on these teams than they know what to do with, but it's also a two-way street. The Carlton Davis loss, we got to get Emmanuel Mosley back on the field. He was once again a scratch. Who knows what we even have with him? Maybe he's just being held out because he can't even play at this
It
point.
sounds like it's a healthy
Um,
scratch. Now, I could
yeah,
be mistaken on that, but everything I've heard to this point is that it's a healthy scratch and that he will be good to go to fill in for Carlton Davis. I
yeah,
think Rakestraw is closer to coming back than not, but he's a rookie and he's played next to zero football
yeah,
all season long.
yeah.
So it's almost like you can't, it's not even fair to expect anything from him at this point.
No, no, it would be more Mosley, and then if we can get anything from Ife Melifonwu, who I guess is starting his 21-day kind of
And then we
comeback
get to
thing.
bring
But
out Vildor for another postseason run.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know, Vince. This is what we signed up for as Lions fans. It's just a brutal kick in the nuts. I don't know what else to tell you. Again, I'm trying to come into this a little bit more on the positive side of things, as you can tell. Just knowing that we faced the team who I think came into that game looking to establish themselves as the best team in the NFL, a guy who's capable of beating any team on any given day in 30 different ways, solidifying his case for the MVP. Again, it's not like we scored 10 points. I know a lot of it was kind of garbage time points and things like that.
Yeah, that game
We're
was
still
never
able
a
to move the
doubt at
ball.
all.
No, no. But um, this has been a very, very painful 48 hours, you know. And if you left work Friday or Saturday or whenever you did, you're probably feeling pretty good. Okay, hey, let's see what we got against Buffalo. And um, again, swift kick in the nuts, for lack of a better term.
So we touched on it, how Buffalo just came out and dominated start to finish. I don't care what the scoreboard says. I don't care what the stat sheet says. That game was not as close as it looks. obviously you're losing key pieces,
Yeah.
numerous pieces. And that's to say nothing about Khalil Dorsey, who's a mainstay on special teams. Take that for what it is. Do you even want to talk about the game, Phil? I mean, what do you think?
No, no,
Is
no,
he,
no.
is he worth talking about the game?
No, I mean, we, we're a couple days removed now by the time you're listening to this. Um, I will say this though. I mean, you know, I think the Buffalo Bills fans showed up, as we thought they would. I don't think there's any sort of animosity between the two fan bases.
No.
I think everyone was pretty civil with it. I think it had all the makings, if we were completely healthy, of being a game that, when you look at the score on paper, would have been indicative of a shootout and a classic, and this great game that you can kind of look back on the season on very fondly. And it just it wasn't the case. It wasn't the case. I just kind of had a bad feeling, once Buffalo kind of deferred. I was like, okay, well, that's strange, that we're going to start. And I think, as much as we love Ben Johnson and kind of Ben Johnson on script and kind of coming up with some things, um, there's been a couple games this year where we have starting out so flat. And I think, for as much credit as he gets, is being about as good as anyone from a game plan and script standpoint, we got away from it. You know, again, we did have some trick plays in there. The touchdown pass to Skipper was kind of innovative. If this was a win, that would be an awesome thing that we could go ahead and kind of celebrate and highlight and things like that. But I don't know. It's just one of those things that it's just incredibly disappointing. Here we are with what's happened, with who we've lost, with the result that happened. We're just 10 days prior, we took home the Packers on Thursday Night Football, and feeling pretty good about where we were standing and stuff like that. So again, we'll see. You know, um, still playing meaningful football. There's no doubt about it. We're going to be in the playoffs. It's just, what can we? If this is a ship, this is one of those ships that, I hate to say, is sinking, but it essentially is sinking on this season at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's where you and I are slightly different. I think it's all the way hit and sunk, but let's just take a look at it from a step back a little bit. Lions at the Bears this coming Sunday, 1 o'clock on Fox. We are recording this on Monday evening, up against the Bears game on Monday Night Football against the Vikings. They are currently getting it handed to them pretty good up there in Skull Kingdom. So it's going to be Bears, short week. They've lost a whole bunch of games in a row. Nothing looks like it's going well from an on-the-field standpoint for the Bears. We've talked about the Lions are going to be limping into this game, the likes of which I've never seen from any NFL franchise ever. Still, every last goal of theirs still right there in front of them. They have not been mathematically or otherwise eliminated from anything yet. How do they go in and get a win on the road in the cold against a team that's kind of been a bit of a boogeyman for them over the years, even when Chicago hasn't been that good of a team?
I'll be honest. I'm not really care about the cold. What I am worried about, if we do have it, being that is the Windy City, is any sort of like strong wind. I think that would be the one thing to disrupt any sort of passing game rhythm that we would have, that we're clearly going to have to rely upon a little bit more without Montgomery being in there. And kind of having to use Gibbs probably a little bit more in short passing game situations and things like that as well. That is really more of what I'm concerned about. Of course, when it is cold, it's harder to catch the ball. We know that. But I think just having this team, and maybe even just this offense, going to Lambeau earlier was not as cold, but kind of going through the elements. I think that's somewhat of a decent precedent for it, but it's going to be a different kind of cold. But again, that is one of those things, as we get a little closer to game day, we'll have to see with kind of where the weather is at. Again, Chicago's got some talent. They really, really do. I like that defense coming into the season, and I don't think it's really been a defensive issue. There are some games they've looked better than others, but um, for them, it's just trying to get Caleb Williams in rhythm and finding some of the receivers. He's been off all season long with DJ Moore. They can't get right. Roma Dunze and him kind of had some early chemistry early on. It's not really articulated. I think he's like, I think I saw a stat. He's entering tonight like sixth in receptions and yards for rookies, which you expect a little bit more from the ninth overall pick, than something like that. Um, and let's be honest, we have a target on our back, right? So, Chicago's going to be going into it trying to break this loss streak that they have, trying to hand us, a loss when we're trying to just keep something together, on this season. I think you just kind of have to, again, I would love to be able to rely upon that run game. Gibbs and Montgomery, we know them as two different runners, So, what is this offensive line? What were the issues that we saw, Sunday in the 425 window that just had so many issues? Was it something that Buffalo did from a front standpoint? We just couldn't get the run game going, you know. If we can establish something with Gibbs and Vaki or Reynolds, I feel pretty confident, But I anticipate this one to be a close game.
The stats are what the stats are, and I think we can all agree that the Lions are a much better team when they can run the ball,
Yeah,
and you're going to be missing a huge component of that in the Bears game. You do have to wonder on the other side of things from the Bears. It's like, yeah, they were this close to beating the Lions on Thanksgiving. It took an active coaching malfeasance, which cost Matt Eberflus his job, arguably.
right.
Otherwise, the Bears probably would have won that game, whether it was in regulation or had a good chance of it in overtime. You do, to an extent, have to wonder, are some guys out there going to be making business decisions and not looking to hurt themselves in a meaningless contest, or if there's a unspoken decree of, hey, we got to be thinking about draft capital for next year's draft at this point. But either way, I think the Lions are going to very much have their work cut out for them in a
Yeah.
situation heading into Week 16 that I don't think anybody could have foreseen one bit. I mean, when's the last time you saw a 12-2 franchise with as grim perceivably of an outlook as it seems?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? 2 losses, 12 wins, and it seems like the season's over now, right?
And before the
Um,
game, I heard on CBS, they said that only 3 coaches in NFL history have gone on to win 13 games in a season after losing 13 games in their first season as a head coach with that team. Bill Walsh, Jimmy Johnson, Chuck Noll, all Super Bowl winning head coaches. All Dan Campbell has to do is win one more game, and he's in that company.
yeah.
Jared Goff has the potential with one more win to be one of only 3 quarterbacks in NFL history to win 13 games in a season with 2 different franchises. He would join Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, all Super Bowl winners. So that had me thinking, okay, hey, kind of like what Campbell said, which I did caution a week ago during his post-game speech, but it's almost kind of written in the stars at this point. It's amazing what a 60-minute football game can do to completely change the perception.
Yeah. Yeah. It's depleted, decrepit, deleted. I don't know. It feels like the word you were looking for was someone with a D right there, right? For what the Lions
Dilapidated,
did.
even. I mean,
Mhm.
you can use all of them.
Dilapidated and decrepit Detroit defense. There's our alliteration of the week, folks.
Damn it. There's another D word for you.
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. So, um, yeah, this just what a ride, and this is the part of the ride that we don't like, you know. Um, I don't know. I know it's crazy talk because it's just sort of like, where are we? What just happened? Um, I think at least this upcoming game against the Bears, we're just gonna somehow duct tape it together. We'll see what happens, and I just think we're gonna have more will than the Bears to get the win after this loss. You know, again, take all expectations of what we had, throw them in the trash, right?
Yeah.
I think at least just for this Sunday game, I think we're just gonna duct tape it together and just get the win. We'll see what happens after that. But you just gotta hope that some of these guys on defense, and I'm not even saying win a game in the postseason, but just be competitive the rest of the way. The guy like Alex Anzalone, that you can just hope that, he can play. And Iffy Melifonwu, maybe you can line up a little bit as a linebacker. My goodness, that would kind of help going up against a tight end if you had a guy like that in the box, right? You know, this is it's just been incredibly difficult, as we've seen these injuries mount, and there's a reason all these guys were unsigned, and you know, the one game that like Jamal Adams played a couple snaps, like, oh, that's okay. All right. Well, yeah, it doesn't work week to week, right? Um, so again, Chicago, they've gone through their own issues this year, but they've been bad now for a stretch. I think they are going to give Detroit their all, but kind of my word of the day will be duct tape, because I think we're going to duct tape it together.
Another D word. Look at that. We're making the whole theme of the show all come together at once here.
Yeah.
And to all the loyal listeners of Kneecaps for Breakfast that happen to be coworkers of mine, they'll know that I held the Lions funeral Monday morning. So I buried any hope that I had of what this season could entail. That's all buried and cremated, or whatever you want to put it as. And whatever happens the rest of the way, we're just going to sit back and watch and have zero expectations. And that's going to start with this Sunday's game against the Bears. And the effort that we see in that Bears game is going to tell me a lot about how the rest of the season, the remaining regular season games, and the at least one playoff game is going to go.
All right.
Because you're going to be able to tell early on, I think, what the mindset and what the attitude of the team is going to be like. And we all know that over the last 26 months since the Lions really got this thing clicking, they have not lost back-to-back games. It's not something that they've done. Obviously, they haven't been in as dire straits with injuries as they have been, but I think we're going to learn a lot about this team and what lies ahead based on what we see in the next 60 minutes of football. And I don't think that's very hot takey. I think that's a very realistic thing to
Right.
look at and be able to take something from. Let's do some picks, Phil.
Okay.
Thursday night football, we have the Broncos catching 3 points as they travel to the suddenly skidding Los Angeles Chargers. We're not exactly sure if maybe Herbert might be battling a little something on the side, but Chargers have lost a couple games in a row now. Broncos having themselves a pretty nice season by expectations. Broncos +3 at Chargers.
Yeah, I think the Chargers are missing J.K. Dobbins a little bit and having a little bit more of that run game to go ahead and balance out, their passing attack, give Herbert a little bit of an option there. So, yeah, I think I'll go with the Broncos in the road win there.
I'm with you there. And Bo Nix has really looked the part as a
Yeah,
possible franchise quarterback in the making. I think he
maybe.
has definitely had some ups and downs, but maybe more ups for him. Chargers, as you said, Phil, can't run the ball, so give me the Broncos +3. A Saturday doubleheader because all these teams are going to be playing on Christmas Day, which is Wednesday, so we'll touch on both of those. We have the Houston Texans, first of all. They are laying 2.5 points as they travel to Arrowhead Stadium. It's up in the air whether Mahomes is going to play. I got to believe he's going to, because nobody's
Yeah.
really crying foul as far as anything too serious. But either way, he looks to be a little bit gimpy. Houston laying points on the road at the Chiefs.
Texans just something's been off this year, and it could be that a little bit of a sophomore slump for CJ Stroud. I know they had Nico Collins banged up for a good portion of the year. They just have not had the same explosiveness, aggressiveness, and general wow factor that they had last year. I just, again, I would rather take Mahomes at 80% probably with the rest of that Chiefs team versus a healthy Texans team.
And we're on the same side of it, Phil. I think the Chiefs have kind of had a little bit of magic of their own so far this year with the way they've been able to close out some of those games. Houston, you never know what you're going to get from one week to the next, so give me the Chiefs in this one. Next game of the Saturday doubleheader, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers catching 6 as they travel to in-division rival Baltimore Ravens. Who you got in this one?
The Steelers just, I don't know. Again, I know we can't expect much from Russell Wilson at this point. I know the Ravens came off the big win against the Giants, who doesn't beat the Giants by 1 billion points. I'd like to think the Ravens are piecing this one together. Give me the Ravens.
I'm going to take the Ravens as well because the Steelers had the ball twice in the second half. They punted the ball with 10 minutes to play in the fourth quarter, and they didn't touch the ball again the rest of the game. So because of that, just give me the Ravens. Ravens by 1,000. And last game on the docket, Vikings laying 2.5 as they travel out to the Pacific Northwest to take on the Seattle Seahawks.
Just because I want some good mojo headed this team's way, give me the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? But
also, I don't want our picks to be all the same, Vince, and I feel you're going Minnesota.
Yeah, so. And I don't deserve nice things, so it's going to be Minnesota, in large part because I don't know if it's going to be Geno Smith or Sam Howell at quarterback for the Seahawks. And they didn't look that good on Sunday Night Football against the Packers, so Vikings it is. Phil, that was probably one of the tougher episodes of Kneecaps for Breakfast that we've done. I think it might even be a little bit tougher than the NFC Championship game. Hard to put it into words exactly, but
well, I would say it's still not as hard as the NFC Championship game, but definitely the hardest game this season. One that I think it's just, again, I'll keep going back to it. It's a swift kick in the nuts, and we're gasping for air right now, right? Let's see what happens in Chicago. Again, just go week by week, and we'll see where this is at. But man, was that an awful game, and nothing good came from it,
Word. So let's end it right there. That's going to be all for us on this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. We appreciate you bearing with us as we kind of have a little bit more of a cathartic session on this episode, but we hope for some good news after our game against the Bears this coming Sunday. We hope you'll join us for a recap of that and much more. For Phil Byrne across the way, Vince Progar saying good morning, go Lions, forward down the field, over and out.